The vast emptiness of space lit up with explosions as another Alliance vessel succumbed to the relentless consortium assault. Admiral Tai-1 Park stood motionless on the bridge of his flagship, the Northern Star, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. His dark eyes reflected the burning wreckage of what had once been the proud cruiser Atlas, now scattered across the stars like fallen leaves in an autumn wind. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, broken only by the steady beeping of combat systems and occasional status reports. The Northern Star shuddered as distant impacts tested its shields, but Tai-1 maintained his balance without effort, years of space combat having given him what veterans called space legs. "Admiral, the 7th Fleet has gone dark." Lieutenant Jaya's voice cut through the quiet, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. Despite delivering news that spelled doom for thousands of their comrades, her voice remained steady. "The consortium broke through our lines in Section Delta. We've lost all contact with Admiral Chen's battle group." Tai-1's jaw tightened, but he gave no other outward sign of the grief that threatened to overwhelm him. Through the sweeping viewport that dominated the bridge's forward section, he watched the enemy advance. The consortium ships were beautiful in their own alien way. Their crystalline hulls caught and reflected starlight like diamonds scattered across black velvet. But their beauty held a deadly purpose, as the Alliance had learned repeatedly over the past 3 years of conflict. "Show me the tactical display," he ordered, moving to the central hologram table. The 3-dimensional map materialized, showing friendly forces in blue and enemy positions in red. The sight made his heart sink further. Red markers outnumbered blue by at least 4-1, and the gap was widening. Lieutenant Jia joined him at the tactical display, her young face illuminated by the holographic light. "Sir, at their current rate of advance, they'll reach the inner defense line within 2 hours. The 7th Fleet's destruction leaves our entire flank exposed." Tai-1 studied the display, his mind racing through options that grew more limited by the minute. The Proxima Centauri system had been chosen as their final defensive line for good reason. Its complex arrangement of asteroid fields and radiation zones created natural choke points that should have given the Alliance an advantage. But the consortium's superior technology had turned those same features against them, using the asteroid fields as cover for their advance. "Begin moving our reserve ships to cover the gap," he ordered, "and get me a direct channel to Alliance Command." "Sir," Jaya hesitated. Command's last transmission indicated they were relocating to the backup facility. Communications might be spotty. The Admiral nodded, understanding the unspoken message. If Command was evacuating their main base, things were even worse than he'd imagined. Around him, the bridge crew continued their duties with practiced efficiency, but he could sense their growing fear. They all knew what lay beyond Proxima Centauri, Earth's solar system, humanity's cradle, and now possibly its final refuge. A massive explosion lit up the viewport, and Tai-1 turned to see one of their destroyer escorts break apart under concentrated enemy fire. The ship's death throes painted space in orange and red, a brief, terrible funeral pyre for its crew. Enemy fighters, moving in attack formation, the sensor officer reported. "They're targeting our point defense grid. Launch interceptor squadrons 3 and 4, Tai-1 commanded. "Keep them off our bigger ships." He watched as streams of smaller Allied vessels rushed to meet the incoming threat, leaving trails of blue engine fire in their wake. The tactical display updated continuously, showing more Alliance ships winking out of existence. Each lost marker represented hundreds of lives, years of training, and irreplaceable military assets. The consortium pressed their advantage relentlessly, their formations perfect, their timing impeccable. "Sir," Jaya's voice had dropped to nearly a whisper, "I'm picking up unusual energy readings from the enemy flagship. They might be preparing to deploy their main weapon." Tai-1 had seen that weapon in action before. It could tear a battlecruiser apart at the atomic level, leaving nothing but scattered particles where proud ships had once sailed. The Alliance had no defense against it. Their shields might as well have been paper for all the protection they offered. He moved back to the viewport, watching as more consortium ships emerged from the asteroid field. Their crystalline hulls seemed to pulse with internal light, a sign that they were powering up for a major assault. The enemy advanced in perfect formation, their discipline evident in every movement. "Order all ships to fall back to position Beta," he commanded. "We need to buy more time." He didn't say what they needed time for. Everyone on the bridge knew that unless something changed dramatically, they were fighting a losing battle. The vast space around them continued to light up with weapons fire and explosions. Escape pods streaked away from damaged Alliance vessels, their occupants hoping to reach safety before the consortium's hunter-killer drones found them. The enemy showed no mercy to escaped crew members. Another harsh lesson the Alliance had learned early in the war. Taiwan felt the weight of command pressing down on him like a physical force. Every decision he made now would determine how many of his people lived or died. The consortium had pushed them back across 12 systems, destroying everything in their path. Now only this checkpoint stood between them and Earth, and even this was failing. As he watched another wave of enemy ships approach, Taiwan thought of home, of Earth's blue skies and endless oceans. He thought of the billions of people who depended on the Alliance fleet to keep them safe. The weight of that responsibility settled around his shoulders like a heavy cloak as he prepared to give orders that would send more brave souls to their deaths. The battle for Proxima Centauri had barely begun, but already Taiwan could see their defeat written in the stars. Unless a miracle happened, humanity's last line of defense would fall. And after that, Earth itself would be next. The red dust of Mars swirled around Dr. Hae-Newell Lee's environment suit as she carefully brushed away centuries of debris from the artifact before her. The setting sun cast long shadows across the excavation site, turning the rust-colored landscape into a maze of dark shapes and deeper shadows. Her heart raced as her tools revealed more of the crystalline structure embedded in the ancient rock face. "Sung-min, you need to see this," she called over the radio to her research partner. Dr. Sung-min Kang appeared at the edge of the dig site moments later, his bulky suit awkwardly navigating the uneven terrain. The object they uncovered was unlike anything in the historical record. A perfect hexagonal crystal, roughly the size of a tablet computer, sat in a carefully carved recess in the rock. What made it extraordinary wasn't just its shape, but the faint blue glow that pulsed from within its structure. "It's still active," Sung-min whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "After all this time, it still has power." Hae-Newell carefully extracted the crystal from its resting place, using tools designed specifically for handling unknown artifacts. As soon as her gloved hands touched its surface, the crystal's glow intensified, and patterns of light danced across its facets. Back at the Mars research base, they worked through the night in their lab, scanning the crystal with every instrument at their disposal. The data readings were unlike anything they'd seen before. The crystal wasn't just a power source or a simple data storage device. It was both, and much more. "Look at these energy signatures." Hae-Newell pointed to a series of readings on their main screen. "The crystal isn't just storing information, it's actively processing it. This is a computer, but it operates on principles we barely understand." Sung-min adjusted his glasses, his expression intense as he studied the data. "The atomic structure is impossibly perfect. No natural process could create this. Someone made this, and they had technology far beyond our current capabilities." As they worked to decode the crystal's contents, more artifacts emerged from the dig site. Each new discovery added pieces to a puzzle that grew more astonishing by the day. The crystals contained technical documents, engineering specifications, and detailed schematics for technologies that seemed to defy the laws of physics as humanity understood them. 3 months into their research, Hae-Newell found herself standing before the Earth Defense Council in their underground chamber beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with military leaders and government officials from every major nation, all drawn by the promise of what she and Sung-min had discovered. The crystals contained complete technical specifications for an advanced defensive system, she explained, her voice steady despite her nerves. shield technology that could withstand forces that would tear our current ships apart, weapons that could pierce any known defense. But most importantly, they show us how to build ships that could stand against threats we haven't even encountered yet. Admiral Chen leaned forward in his seat. You're certain these designs would work? This isn't just theoretical physics. He Newell nodded, bringing up a holographic display of one of their test results. We've already successfully replicated some of the basic principles in our lab. The technology is real, and it works. But implementing it on a large scale will take time. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions. Everyone knew the Alliance was losing ground against the consortium. Every week brought news of another system falling to their advanced weapons. How long would it take to implement these designs? General Santos asked, her voice cutting through the chatter. To fully integrate the technology into our ship designs. 6 months at minimum, Sungmin replied. And that's with every resource we can muster. The room grew quiet as the implications sank in. 6 months was an eternity in a war where battles were won or lost in hours. The consortium's advance showed no signs of slowing. But they had no choice. The council approved their proposal, and within days, the Mars Research Facility transformed into a hive of activity. Engineers and scientists from around the solar system converged on their lab, working around the clock to understand and implement the ancient designs. How Newell and Sungmin barely slept, pushing themselves to decode more of the crystal's secrets. Each new discovery brought both excitement and dread. Excitement at the incredible technology they were uncovering, and dread at the growing evidence that the crystals were more than just abandoned technology. These aren't just weapons designs, He Newell told Sungmin one night as they studied a newly decoded section. They're a warning. Whoever left these here, they were preparing for something. Something they knew would come. Sungmin looked up from his work, his face pale in the blue light of the crystal displays. You think they knew about the consortium? I think they fought them. He Newell replied softly. And I think they left these crystals here, hoping someone would find them in time. As the weeks passed, their work began to bear fruit. The first prototype shields, built using the crystal's specifications, proved capable of withstanding forces that would have destroyed any human-made defense system. The weapons tests exceeded their most optimistic projections. But time was running out. Reports from the front lines grew darker with each passing day. The consortium had pushed past humanity's outer colonies and now threatened the inner systems. The Earth Defense Council demanded daily updates on their progress. We're implementing the designs as fast as we can, He Newell reported during one particularly tense meeting. But we have to be careful. One mistake in the integration process could be catastrophic. They worked through setbacks and breakthroughs, each day bringing them closer to their goal. The ancient technology slowly came to life under their hands, transforming human ships into something new and powerful. But as He Newell watched the first successful test of a fully integrated shield system, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Somewhere out in space, the consortium was advancing, unaware that humanity had found the key to fighting back. The question that kept her awake at night wasn't whether they could implement the technology. It was whether they could do it fast enough to make a difference. The fate of Earth itself might depend on their race against time. The Northern Star's bridge rocked violently as enemy fire hammered their weakening shields. Commander Youngmi Kim braced herself against her tactical station, her fingers flying over the holographic controls as she redirected power to critical systems. Warning lights flashed across her display, indicating multiple hull breaches on the lower decks. Seal off sections 14 through 17, she ordered, her voice remaining calm despite the chaos around her. Redirect all remaining fighter squadrons to protect our medical ships during evacuation. Through the massive bridge viewport, she could see their fighter pilots engaging the enemy at point-blank range. The small Alliance craft weaved between massive consortium vessels, trying to draw fire away from the vulnerable evacuation ships. Every few seconds, another fighter would disappear in a brief flash of light, its pilot's sacrifice buying precious seconds for others to escape. Damage report. Admiral Ta 1 called out, his uniform covered in dust from a recent impact that had shaken loose debris from the ceiling. Shields at 28%. Young Mai responded, scanning her readings. We've lost the starboard missile batteries, and engineering reports the main reactor is running hot. If we take another direct hit. Her words cut off as the ship shuddered again. A support beam groaned overhead, and somewhere below deck, she could hear the distinct sound of emergency bulkheads slamming shut. Status of the civilian transports. Ta 1 asked, moving to stand beside her station. Young Mei pulled up the evacuation data. 60% of the civilian ships have made it through the jump point. The rest are still in the queue, but the consortium forces are closing in on their position. The tactical display showed the grim reality of their situation. The enemy had them surrounded on 3 sides, their crystalline ships forming an ever-tightening noose around the Alliance's remaining forces. Only a narrow corridor remained open for the civilian evacuation, and even that was under constant attack. Sir, Lieutenant Jada called out from her communication station. We've lost contact with the Petersburg. Their last transmission indicated multiple hull breaches, and she paused, swallowing hard, their venting atmosphere across all decks. Young Mai watched another friendly marker disappear from her tactical display. The Petersburg had been their last heavy cruiser supporting the eastern flank. Without it, that entire sector was now exposed. A sudden alert caught her attention. The sensor readings were unlike anything she'd seen before. Admiral, she called out, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the outer system. Multiple gravity distortions are forming. Tai 1 gripped his command chair, his knuckles white. Consortium reinforcements. Young Miss studied the readings more closely. I don't think so, sir. The signature pattern is different. These distortions are larger, more organized, and they're appearing in a formation I've never seen the consortium use. The bridge crew held their breath as they watched the readings. The distortions were growing stronger, creating ripples in the fabric of space-time itself. The energy output was massive, far beyond anything their sensors were calibrated to measure. Sir, the consortium ships are changing formation, Young Mai reported. They're pulling back from the distortion zones. I think they're as surprised by this as we are. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new warnings as the gravity distortions reached their peak. Space itself seemed to bend and twist, creating visible distortions that could be seen even through the viewport. All ships maintain position. Ta 1 ordered across the fleet channel. Do not engage unless fired upon. Something's coming through, and I want to know what it is before we commit our remaining forces. Young Mi's fingers danced across her console as she tried to make sense of the sensor data. The energy readings were off the scale, but there was something familiar about the pattern. Something she had seen in theoretical papers about advanced propulsion systems. Sir, she said slowly, these signatures, they match some of the theoretical models from the Mars research facility. The ones Dr. Lee was working on. Before Tai 1 could respond, the first distortion reached its breaking point. Space itself tore open in a brilliant flash of blue-white light. Through the tear, something massive began to emerge. Multiple contacts, Young Mai announced, her voice tight with tension. Size and mass readings exceed anything in our database. These ships they're larger than anything we've ever encountered. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as more tiers in space appeared, each one delivering another massive vessel. The new ships were dark, almost impossible to see against the backdrop of space, except where their hull plates absorbed the light from nearby stars. Sir, Jaya called out, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. It's on Alliance frequencies. Tai 1 straightened his uniform. Put it through. Young Mi kept her eyes on her tactical display, watching as both Alliance and Consortium forces seemed to pause, all attention focused on the new arrivals. Whatever was about to happen, she knew it would change the course of the battle, and possibly the entire war. The tension on the bridge could be cut with a knife as they waited for the transmission to begin. The massive unknown ships continued to emerge from the spatial tiers, their very presence seeming to distort the space around them. Young Mi's sensors were struggling to get clear readings, but one thing was certain. These vessels carried power sources unlike anything she had ever seen. Through the massive tiers in space emerged vessels that made even the seasoned crew of the Northern Star catch their breath. These ships were unlike anything humanity had built before, massive angular shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their hulls were a deep black that made them look like moving pieces of the void itself. Admiral Hyunwoo Choi stood on the bridge of the lead dreadnought, the Prometheus. His new command chair felt strange after years of serving on conventional vessels, but the power thrumming through the ship's deck plates reminded him of why these changes had been necessary. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his tactical officer announced. "Dark energy weapons are charged and targeting systems are locked." Hyunwoo nodded, taking a moment to observe the battle scene before them. The consortium fleet had paused their attack, clearly trying to assess this new threat. Their crystalline ships glinted in the starlight as they began to reposition themselves. "Open a channel to all frequencies," he ordered. His voice carried across space to both friend and foe alike. "This is Admiral Hyunwoo Choi of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to even the odds." The Prometheus's weapons officer, Captain Minji, had her fingers poised over the firing controls. She had spent months training with these new systems, but this would be their first real combat test. "Target locked on the nearest consortium heavy cruisers, sir." "Fire when ready, Captain." The dark energy weapon powered up with a deep thrumming that resonated through the entire ship. When it released, there was no bright flash, no dramatic beam of light. Instead, a ripple of absolute darkness shot across space. Where it touched the consortium cruiser shields, they simply ceased to exist. The beam continued through, cutting the enemy vessel in half as cleanly as a surgeon's scalpel. "Multiple consortium vessels moving to engage," Minji reported. "They're charging their main weapons." Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. "Deploy the phase shields. Let's show them what Dr. Lee's discoveries can really do." The consortium's return fire was impressive. Streams of crystalline energy that had torn through conventional alliance shields like tissue paper. But when they struck the Dreadnoughts' new defenses, the attacks simply passed through empty space. The ships had shifted slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, making them virtually untouchable. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta," Hyunwoo commanded. The human fleet moved with precise coordination, their black hulls making them look like shadows flowing through space. "Focus fire on their command ships. Don't let them regroup." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, months of training paying off as they coordinated their revolutionary weapons and defenses. Each shot from their dark energy cannons found its mark. Each defensive phase shift came just in time to avoid enemy fire. On the tactical display, Hyunwoo watched as the consortium's neat formations began to break apart. Their ships, for the first time since the war began, showed signs of confusion and disarray. The crystalline vessels attempted to adapt their tactics, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for these new human weapons. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Northern Star. Admiral Park is requesting coordination data. Send them our targeting solutions and shield frequencies." Hyunwoo responded. "Tell all Alliance ships to fall in behind us. We'll clear a path through their lines." The Dreadnoughts advanced as one, their dark energy weapons cutting through the enemy fleet. Where before the Alliance had been fighting for survival, now they were pushing forward, driving the consortium back step by step. A massive explosion lit up space as one of the consortium's largest ships succumbed to combined fire from 3 dreadnoughts. The blast temporarily illuminated the black hulls of the human vessels, making them look like ancient sea creatures emerging from the depths. "Enemy fleet is beginning to withdraw," Minji announced, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. "Their command ships are turning away from the battle." Hyunwoo watched as the consortium forces began their retreat. Ships that had seemed unstoppable just hours ago were now fleeing before humanity's new weapons, but he knew better than to celebrate too early. "Maintain battle formations," he ordered. "This is just the beginning. They'll be back, and next time they'll be better prepared." As the last enemy ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, the bridge crew of the Prometheus finally allowed themselves to relax slightly. They had done it. Their new ships and weapons had proven themselves in actual combat. Hyun-woo opened a channel to the Alliance flagship. "Admiral Park, I apologize for our late arrival. I trust we haven't missed all the excitement." The response came back filled with both relief and amazement. "Your timing was perfect, Admiral Choi. Though I must admit, those are some impressive ships you're commanding, courtesy of some remarkable discoveries on Mars and the brilliant work of Dr. Lee and her team," Hyun-woo replied. "We should discuss the full details in person. I believe this war just entered a new phase." The human dreadnoughts moved to take up defensive positions around the battered Alliance fleet. Their black hulls stood out against the stars, a visible reminder that humanity had finally found a way to fight back. The tide of war had turned, and the consortium would soon learn that underestimating human ingenuity had been their greatest mistake. The massive human dreadnoughts moved through space with a grace that seemed to defy physics. Despite their enormous size, they turned and accelerated with the agility of fighter craft, their advanced inertial dampeners compensating for forces that should have torn their crews apart. Commander Young Mai watched in amazement as the Prometheus, largest of the human vessels, executed a perfect spiral maneuver around an incoming consortium attack formation. The enemy ships, their crystalline hulls flashing with weapons fire, couldn't land a single hit on the nimble behemoth. "Their maneuverability is incredible," she said, tracking the battle on her tactical display. The human ships were rewriting everything she knew about space combat. How are they maintaining structural integrity during these turns? Admiral Ta-won leaned forward in his command chair, studying the battle with intense focus. "Whatever Dr. Lee found on Mars, it's given us more than just weapons. Those ships are operating on principles we never even imagined." The Northern Star's bridge crew watched as a consortium heavy cruiser tried to flank one of the human dreadnoughts. The black vessel simply phased slightly out of normal space, letting the enemy's energy beams pass harmlessly through where it had been, then phased back in behind the cruiser. A single shot from its dark energy weapons split the consortium ship from bow to stern. "All Alliance vessels," Ta-won broadcast across the fleet channel, his voice steady and confident, "form up on the human ships. Coordinate your attacks with their targeting data. Follow their lead and strike where they create openings." Young Mei quickly integrated the targeting data from the human vessels into her tactical systems. The information streaming across her display showed prediction patterns she had never seen before. The human ships weren't just tracking where enemy vessels were, but where they would be several seconds into the future. "Sir, the consortium fleet is breaking formation in Sector 7, she reported. "Their command structure appears to be fragmenting. They're having trouble coordinating their responses to our new attack patterns." The tactical display told the story clearly. The once perfect consortium formations were dissolving into chaos. Ships that had moved with mechanical precision now scattered like startled fish, trying to avoid the devastating fire from the human dreadnoughts. A squadron of Alliance fighters, coordinating with one of the human ships, executed a perfect attack run on a consortium destroyer. The larger human vessel drew the enemy's fire while the fighters slipped through gaps in their defenses, placing charges at critical points. The resulting explosion lit up space like a newborn star. "Fighter Squadron Delta reports successful attack," Young Mei announced. "They're requesting permission to coordinate another run with the Dreadnought Hyperion." Taiwan nodded. "Granted. Tell all fighter wings, stick close to our new allies. Use their coverage to get in close." The battle continued to shift in their favor. The human dreadnoughts seemed to anticipate every consortium counterattack, their dark energy weapons striking with deadly precision. Where before the Alliance had struggled to even damage the enemy's shields, now they watched consortium vessels falling one after another. Multiple enemy ships attempting to retreat, Young Mai reported, tracking the movement of crystalline vessels as they broke away from the battle. They're trying to regroup at the system's edge. Not this time, Taiwan said firmly. Order the 7th and 9th squadrons to cut off their escape route. The human ships have proven they can handle the main force. We'll deal with the runners. The Alliance vessels moved with new confidence, coordinating their attacks with the superior human technology. Young Mai watched as ships that had been on the defensive for months now pressed the attack, turning the consortium's own tactics against them. A massive explosion drew everyone's attention to the viewport. One of the human dreadnoughts had just taken out 3 consortium cruisers with a single shot, its dark energy weapon creating a chain reaction that rippled through their crystalline hulls. "Sir," Young Mai called out, "I'm detecting power surges in the remaining consortium command ships. They appear to be charging their main weapons." The enemy's desperate gambit became clear as several of their largest vessels began to glow with gathered energy. They were planning to use their most devastating weapons, the same ones that had destroyed entire Alliance fleets in previous battles. But before they could fire, the human ships moved in perfect synchronization. Their phase shields shifted to full power, and their dark energy weapons fired simultaneously. The combined blast caught the consortium ships at their most vulnerable moment, just as they were channeling maximum power to their weapons. The resulting destruction was spectacular. The consortium command ships literally shattered, their crystalline structures breaking apart into countless glittering fragments that scattered across space like a deadly beautiful meteor shower. "Enemy fleet is in full retreat," Young Mai announced, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. "Their remaining ships are breaking orbit and jumping to FTL." The bridge crew of the Northern Star watched as their longtime tormentors fled the battlefield. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours ago now ran from the combined might of human and Alliance forces. "Send word to all ships," Taiwan ordered. "Maintain battle formations and secure the system. The consortium may be running, but this battle has taught us not to take anything for granted." As the adrenaline of combat began to fade, Young Mai found herself studying the tactical data from the human ships with growing excitement. The technology they had deployed wasn't just powerful, it was revolutionary. For the first time since the war began, she felt real hope for the future. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Grand Council chamber beneath the Rocky Mountains buzzed with activity as military leaders and scientists gathered to hear the full story behind humanity's sudden technological leap. Dr. He Newell stood at the center of the room, her hand steady as she arranged the ancient crystals on the display table. Dr. Sung Min Kang worked quietly beside her, connecting the crystals to their translation system. The holographic display sprang to life, filling the chamber with ethereal blue light and strange symbols that slowly transformed into readable text. "What we found on Mars wasn't just advanced technology," He Newell began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "These crystals contain the last testament of a civilization that faced the same enemy we're fighting now." The assembled leaders leaned forward as she activated a sequence of images. 3-dimensional representations of ancient Mars appeared, not the red desert they knew, but a world of gleaming cities and vast oceans. "This was Mars, 50,000 years ago," she explained, "home to a civilization far more advanced than our own. They had spread across multiple star systems, much like the Alliance today." Some men stepped forward, adjusting his glasses as he added, "They called themselves the Preservers. Their technology was based on manipulating dark energy and phase shifting, the same principles we've now incorporated into our ships." Admiral Ta-1, fresh from the victory at Proxima Centauri, raised his hand. "Are you saying the consortium destroyed all of this? But why didn't we find any evidence before?" Newell triggered another sequence of images. The assembled leaders watched as the ancient Mars was systematically attacked by familiar crystalline ships. The consortium doesn't just defeat their enemies, they'd erase them. They'd break down all evidence of advanced civilization at the molecular level. The preservers knew they couldn't win. Some men continued, but they refused to let their knowledge die with them. They hid these data crystals deep within Mars' crust, protected by fields that would only activate in the presence of human technology. The chamber erupted in murmurs as the implications sank in. Newell waited for quiet before continuing. The consortium has been moving through our galaxy for thousands of years, destroying any civilization that reaches a certain level of advancement. They see potential rivals as threats to be eliminated. She brought up a galactic map, showing the pattern of the consortium's movements. They're methodical, patient. They wait until a civilization reaches space travel, then strike before their victims can develop effective defenses. Earth was next on their list. But the preservers found a weakness. Some men added, his voice growing more animated. The consortium's crystalline technology is vulnerable to specific frequencies of dark energy. They hid this knowledge, hoping the next civilization to rise on Mars or Earth would find it in time. Admiral Hyun-Woo Choi, commander of the new Dreadnought fleet, spoke up. The weapons worked better than we could have hoped. But will the consortium adapt? They already are, Newell confirmed. But the crystals contain more than just weapon designs. The preservers left us their entire technological database. We've only scratched the surface of what they knew. She activated another crystal, and new schematics filled the air. These are designs for defensive systems, power generation methods, and propulsion technologies we haven't even attempted to build yet. The preservers wanted to give us everything we'd need not just to survive, but to thrive. The council chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just found a weapon. They'd inherited the legacy of an ancient civilization that had faced the same threat and planned for humanity's survival thousands of years in advance. There's more, Sung Min said softly. The crystals contain star maps marking the location of other preserver outposts. They seeded their knowledge across multiple systems, hoping that even if some caches were destroyed, others would be found. Newell picked up one of the crystals, its blue light pulsing gently in her hand. The preservers didn't just leave us technology, they left us a mission. To succeed where they failed, to stop the consortium's endless cycle of destruction, and to preserve the knowledge and cultures they tried to erase. The chamber remained silent as the weight of this revelation settled over everyone present. Humanity had inherited not just advanced technology, but a sacred trust from a long-dead civilization. We've already begun analyzing the next set of technical data, Newell continued. The designs we used in the recent battle were just the beginning. With these resources, we can build ships and weapons that will not only defend Earth, but protect other civilizations from sharing the preserver's fate. Admiral Ta-Won stood, his expression resolute. How long until we can implement these new designs? The preservers left detailed instructions, Sung Min replied. They spent their final years making sure their technology could be understood and replicated by whoever found it. With the factories we've already converted, we can begin production of the next generation of ships within months. Newell brought up one final image, a message left by the preservers, translated into modern language. They believed in us, she said quietly. They saw something in human potential that made them choose Earth as the hiding place for their most important legacy. We can't let them down. The council chamber erupted in discussion as military leaders and scientists began planning humanity's next steps. The revelation that they were part of a struggle spanning tens of thousands of years had transformed their understanding of the war. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to fulfill a promise made by a dying civilization, to ensure that the consortium's long reign of destruction would finally come to an end. The blue marble of Earth slowly rose above Luna's gray horizon, casting a gentle light across the observation deck of the New Alliance headquarters. Admiral Ta-Won stood at the panoramic window, his reflection ghostly against the reinforced glass. Beside him, Dr. Newell Lee held one of the last preserver data crystals, its soft glow mixing with Earth's light. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The Alliance headquarters, built into Luna's Shackleton crater, represented the new cooperation between humanity and their alien allies. Ships of various designs moved through space around them, the crystalline vessels of their former enemies now replaced by the combined fleet of the Alliance. Construction on the 6th Dreadnought will be complete next week, Taiwan said, breaking the comfortable silence. The shipyards are working at full capacity. Hanul turned the crystal in her hands, watching patterns of light dance across its facets. The preservers would be proud. Their technology, combined with human innovation, has changed everything. Below them, in the sprawling complex carved into lunar rock, representatives from 100 worlds worked together. The victory at Proxima Centauri had done more than push back the consortium. It had proven that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The consortium's attacks have become less frequent, Taiwan observed. They're learning to fear our new capabilities. They're adapting, Hainul replied. Each engagement shows them developing countermeasures to our weapons. But that's why the preservers left us their entire database, not just weapon designs. X. The crystal in her hands contained the next generation of technological advances, improvements to their phase shields, more efficient dark energy weapons, and designs for ships that could traverse vast distances in the blink of an eye. A group of Alliance engineers passed through the observation deck, their different species working together with easy familiarity. Among them was Dr. Sungmin, deep in discussion with a tall, blue-skinned alien about power distribution systems. "We've got a long fight ahead," Taiwan said, his eyes tracking a patrol of human dreadnoughts as they moved across the lunar sky. "But for the first time since this war began, I truly believe we can win." Newell nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "The real question is, are we ready for what comes after victory?" The Admiral turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "The preservers didn't just leave us weapons," she explained. "They left us their history, their culture, their understanding of the universe. They believed humanity could succeed where they failed, not just in defeating the consortium, but in becoming guardians of life in this galaxy." Through the window, they could see Mars glowing red in the distance, once home to a mighty civilization, now a silent guardian of their legacy. But perhaps not forever. The crystals contained designs for environmental restoration systems, Hainul continued. The preservers believed their world could live again, given time and the right technology. They dreamed of future generations walking under Mars' blue skies. Taiwan considered this a future worth fighting for. Their conversation was interrupted by a young officer hurrying onto the observation deck. "Admiral, Doctor, the Council is ready for your presentation." They turned away from the window, walking together through the bustling headquarters. Around them, the combined achievements of human and preserver technology were evident: gravity control systems, holographic displays, and energy fields that would have seemed like magic just a year ago. "Incoming ships detected," announced a calm voice over the station speakers. Alliance vessels returning from deep patrol. Through the observation windows, they watched as 5 ships emerged from phase space. 3 human dreadnoughts escorting 2 Alliance cruisers. Their arrival represented everything humanity had achieved: the power to defend themselves, the wisdom to work with allies, and the responsibility to protect others. As they entered the council chamber, Hainul took one last look at the crystal in her hands. Within its crystalline structure lay humanity's future, not just survival, but the chance to build something greater than they had ever imagined. "Ready?" Taiwan asked, pausing at the chamber doors. Hainul smiled, tucking the crystal safely away. The preservers were ready to trust humanity with their legacy. The least we can do is prove them right. The doors opened to reveal the gathered representatives of the Alliance, human and alien alike, united in purpose. The war wasn't over, but a new dawn had broken. Humanity had found its place among the stars, inheritors of an ancient legacy and architects of a future that would span galaxies. As Hainul stepped forward to present the latest discoveries from the Preserver archives, she felt the weight of history, past and future, resting on her shoulders. But it wasn't a burden. It was a gift, a chance to build something that would last for thousands of years to come. The end. Thanks for watching.